have been said before. I remember them, but I assume that people forget, but I guess not. I'm not sure we'll even get to everything, but spend the next hour or so going through the kinnis, like we do, and then at the end, I'd like to speak about a very, very special individual related to the Holocaust, like we do every year. Someone who I don't think it's a stretch to say, probably had the harshest experience from anyone that we've talked about. We've talked now about 7-8 years, different individuals. This individual probably had the hardest experience of all of them. I just want to start by giving a brief introduction to Kinnis, which I heard from this week. Rev. Reuven Berman, who's a Rav in Bergenfield, New Jersey, said this introduction a few years ago, and I think it's very powerful. He asked the question, and Maishi talked about this a little bit on Shabbos, the concept of you could be on Tisha B'Av and not really experience it. You could Netflix it, sleep it. You could pretty much, ignoring your hunger, pretty much go through the day without really experiencing it. And it's not necessarily a knock on us. We're asked to cry and mourn and sit shiva over something that we don't really have a connection to. We don't know what we're missing. It's not like we experienced it and we lost it. So is there really a purpose in saying kinnos and sitting in shul, listening, trying to feel the day if we don't really feel it? It doesn't really mean much to us. So he gave a few answers. I want to just touch on two. The basic answer is based on the Gemara in Tainis, which says that that you have to earn your place in sharing in the simcha of Yerushalayim. And the way you do that is by participating in the morning. You don't just get to jump to the participation of the simcha without making some sort of effort. That's still, okay, it's an answer, but it's a little bit not satisfying. So he said, Rashi tells us that Yosef was punished in Mitzrayim. He went to jail because he was combing his hair, he was taking care of himself, he was eating, drinking, and while his father Yaakov was mourning. And Rashi says the concept of when your father is suffering, it's not a time for you to get comfortable. Similarly, whether we feel the loss or not, there's a concept of that today Hashem is sitting in mourning. Hashem is mourning the Beis Hamikdash. And whether or not we feel that loss, but there's at least the concept of which we could relate to is if God is in mourning, it's not a time for us to sit and just take it easy today. We got to do something. We should sit in shul, and maybe it's a little boring, it's a little uncomfortable, but let's get a little uncomfortable today when our father is in mourning. We have to do something to not be so comfortable. First, Kina, Shavas Surumeni. I've spoken in the past about the word Shavas, but basically the theme of the Kina is how Hashem inverted and he changed the world in order to allow the Churban to happen. Under the normal laws of nature, the way the world was created, Klal Yisrael could have davened and the tefillas would have been accepted and the Churban would have been avoided, but Hashem wanted to bring the Churban. And so he changed nature, he hid himself behind a sukkah, and he did not accept the tefillas, and in that way the Churban came about. And so the Kina star Shavas through many Shemuni Yoichrai, it's a relation to exactly what we say in Kinnos and Perek Gimel, where we talk about the fact that first of all Hashem hid himself, and second of all that we became schiyumais, we became like disgusting, that even the Goyim didn't want us. We became like a parasite or like a piece of schmutz that they didn't want. And we saw that throughout history. Constantly the Jews are getting expelled from different Spain to Portugal, England, right? Every country in Europe has their own time in history when the Jews were expelled or there were pogroms. So that we became disgusting and repulsive, worse than all the other Chaveirai, meaning all the other nations. Hashem hid himself behind a sukkah so that our tefillas couldn't reach him. That's a period of Hester Tanim. And Hashem hid himself, and in that way, the strong ones, the tzaddikim of Klal Yisrael, were conquered. And then each of the stanzas ends with a pasuk from Eicha Ksila Chalabirai. Nafloi Dena B'Tzol that the Tzion has fallen down to the depths and she remains there. Any Chiksal Achazan Ben Berechia. We wait for the Nevuah of Zechariah. What was the Nevuah of Zechariah? That once again, young and old will live in the streets of Yerushalayim, but not today, not in today's what we quote unquote have today, but really with the Beis Hamikdash, with Nevuah, ad Pillei Gilgal Chavuya, we hope for the miracles of Gilgal when Yeshua came into Eretz Yisrael with Klal Yisrael, the miracles that were there. A little further down, that there was this fear of Shilai's Avera. Now, very interesting by Shilai. Shilai, we know, was a Mishkan for over 300 years. Today, there's no Kedusha to Shilai. The Avera of Shilai was so bad that it lost all semblance of Kedusha, right? There was a time when there was a Kaddish Kedushim there. Nowadays, you can walk there. You don't have to go to a mikvah before you go to Shilai to visit the Macham of the Mishkan. So they were afraid that the Churban of Yerushalayim would have the same impact. They were afraid that the Macham HaMikdash would lose all Kedusha because of our Averas, and there would be no issue, there would be no Kedusha, no remnant left on the Har Bayis. So the enemies were crying out like boars, like, where's your schusim? And they did Maaseh Erva with the exiles. A little further down, is talking about all the other nations that we turned to help us, and they did not. And then at the end, he says, he ends off with many of the kiddush end off with a more uplifting message. That Hashem should do to the enemies what they did to us, what he did to us. That we were expelled to Lachlach and Chavar. These are places where the 12 Shvatim were taken in exile. Young and old, as we talked about that nevuah, that we want them to come back. That Hashem should look down, and we are his people. We are still his people, even though he rejected us. And we use the lashon of lanu, us, because again, Hashem is with us b'tzara, and we say, Hashem, we're with this. You're with us in Galus. You want to go back to Eretz Yisrael. We want to go back to Eretz Yisrael. Please bring the Yeshua very soon.